What happens when one of Britain's most beloved morning show hosts comes face to face with a royal who's burned every bridge back home? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Lorraine Kelly, expecting a softball interview, only to find himself trapped in a verbal battleground that would leave viewers absolutely stunned. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and what started as polite conversation quickly spiraled into the most explosive confrontation daytime television has ever witnessed. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Lorraine decides she's had enough of Harry's victim narrative and calls him out on live television. Last night's episode of Lorraine was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance. Prince Harry was scheduled to discuss his latest ventures and upcoming projects, but from the moment he walked onto that iconic set, something felt different. The atmosphere was charged, and Lorraine Kelly, known for her warm Scottish charm and gentle interviewing style, seemed unusually focused, almost predatory in her preparation. As Harry settled into the familiar cream-colored chair across from Lorraine, his usual confident demeanor appeared slightly strained. Gone was the relaxed prince we'd seen in countless American interviews, replaced by someone who seemed almost defensive before a single question had been asked. Lorraine, impeccably dressed in a vibrant blue blazer, shuffled her notes with deliberate precision, her eyes never leaving her guest. "Harry, lovely to have you here," Lorraine began, her Scottish accent warm but carrying an undertone that regular viewers immediately picked up on. "Now, you've been quite vocal lately about your experiences, haven't you? Tell us about your latest project." Harry shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasping and unclasping in his lap. "Well, Lorraine, it's always great to be here. We're working on some incredible initiatives that really focus on mental health awareness and supporting veterans. It's work that's incredibly close to my heart, as you know." But Lorraine wasn't having any of the rehearsed talking points. She leaned forward slightly, her expression hardening almost imperceptibly. "Mental health? Yes. You've spoken extensively about your own struggles. But I have to ask, Harry, don't you think there's something rather rich about lecturing others on mental health while you've publicly torn your own family apart on the world stage?" The studio fell silent. Camera operators exchanged glances, and you could practically feel the production team holding their collective breath. This wasn't the gentle Lorraine Kelly that millions of viewers tuned in to see each morning. This was someone with a mission, and Harry was clearly unprepared for the direct assault. Harry's jaw tightened visibly. "I think that's a rather unfair characterization, Lorraine. Everything I've done has been about protecting my family and telling my truth. The institution has a long history of protecting certain members while hanging others out to dry." "Your truth?" Lorraine's eyebrows shot up, and there was no hiding the skepticism in her voice. "Harry, you've made millions selling your family's private moments to the highest bidder. You've written books, done documentaries, given interviews where you've systematically destroyed the reputation of people who can't fight back. And you call that protecting your family?" The tension in the studio was becoming unbearable. Harry's face was flushing red, and his carefully maintained composure was beginning to crack. "With respect, Lorraine, you don't understand the full picture. You don't know what it's like to be trapped in that system, to watch your wife being destroyed by the same machine that killed my mother." "Oh, but I do understand, Harry," Lorraine shot back, her voice rising slightly. "I understand that you're a grown man who's turned family loyalty into a commodity. Your grandmother dedicated her entire life to service, died with dignity intact, and within months you were back on television, cashing in on her memory." Harry's hands were now gripping the arms of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. The cameras captured every micro-expression, every telltale sign that this interview was spiraling completely out of control. "You're twisting everything." The Queen understood my position. She supported our decision to step back. "Did she really?" Lorraine's voice was now razor sharp. "Because from where I'm sitting, Harry, it looks like you've spent the last few years systematically destroying everything she built. Your brother, your father, the institution itself. Nothing was sacred when it came to your book deals and Netflix contracts, was it?" The studio audience, initially excited to see the prince, was now sitting in stunned silence. This wasn't celebrity chat show territory anymore. This was a full-scale interrogation, and Harry was clearly struggling to maintain his composure under Lorraine's relentless questioning. His media training was failing him spectacularly, as years of resentment and defensive anger began bubbling to the surface. "I think you need to be very careful about your accusations, Lorraine," Harry said, his voice taking on a warning tone that viewers had never heard from him before. "You're making assumptions about things you know nothing about." But Lorraine was just getting started, and what came next would push this confrontation to a point of no return. Lorraine Kelly had clearly done her homework, and she wasn't about to let Harry's veiled threats intimidate her. She leaned back in her chair, a steely determination replacing her usual maternal warmth, and delivered what would become the most devastating question of Harry's media career. "Let's talk about money then, shall we, Harry?" Lorraine's Scottish accent became more pronounced as her anger intensified. "You left the royal family claiming you needed financial independence, needed to provide security for your family. But then you signed deals worth over £100 million by selling out the very people who raised you. How do you sleep at night?" Harry's face went from red to pale in seconds. This was clearly not a line of questioning he'd prepared for, and his usual media-trained responses were completely failing him. "Lorraine, that's completely inappropriate. Those deals were about creating content that matters, that helps people." "Content that matters?" Lorraine's voice dripped with sarcasm as she reached for a folder beside her chair. "Let me read you some quotes from your own book, Harry. You described private conversations with your dying grandfather, intimate moments with your brother after your mother's funeral, personal details about your father's parenting. You turned your family's grief into entertainment. And you want to tell me that matters?" The studio was dead silent, except for the low hum of cameras. Harry was visibly shaking now, his composure completely shattered. "You don't understand the context of those stories. Everything I shared was to help people understand the truth about what really happened." "The truth?" Lorraine slammed the folder down on her desk, the sharp sound echoing through the studio. "Harry, your truth changes depending on which interviewer you're speaking to and how much they're paying you. You told Oprah one story, wrote something different in your book, and said something completely different to that American comedian. Which version is the truth, Harry?" Harry was now struggling to formulate coherent responses. Years of carefully crafted victim narratives were crumbling under Lorraine's relentless assault. All of those accounts are accurate. Different interviews focus on different aspects of the same experiences." "Different aspects?" Lorraine's voice was rising to levels that regular viewers had never heard before. "You contradicted yourself about conversations with your father, about the circumstances of your exit, about who was supportive and who wasn't. You've been caught in so many inconsistencies that even your most devoted supporters are starting to question your credibility." The cameras captured Harry's hands trembling as he reached for his water glass. This was a man who had given dozens of interviews, written memoirs, participated in documentaries, but he was completely unprepared for someone to actually challenge his narrative with facts and direct confrontation. "Lorraine, I think you're being deliberately hostile here," Harry managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. "I came here to discuss important work, not to be ambushed with tabloid-style attacks." "Tabloid-style attacks?" Lorraine's laugh was cold and humorless. "Harry, everything I'm asking you is based on your own words, your own published accounts. If it sounds like tabloid material, perhaps that's because you've turned your life into tabloid material." Harry was now visibly agitated, his leg bouncing nervously as he struggled to regain control of the interview. "You're twisting everything I've said. You're taking things out of context, just like the British press always did." "The British press that you now work with when it suits you?" Lorraine shot back immediately. "The same press that you claim destroyed your life, but you're perfectly happy to give exclusive interviews to when you have something to promote? You can't have it both ways, Harry." The prince was clearly reaching his breaking point. His carefully maintained public persona was disintegrating in real time, and millions of viewers were watching him struggle to defend positions that had been years in the making. "I think we need to move on from this line of questioning," Harry said, his voice taking on an edge of desperation. "This isn't what we agreed to discuss." But Lorraine was relentless. "What we agreed to discuss? Harry, you've spent years discussing your family's private business with anyone who would pay you for it. Now you want to control the narrative when someone asks you to account for your choices." Harry's composure finally snapped completely, and what happened next would shock viewers and become the most talked about moment in daytime television history. "You know what, Lorraine? Harry's voice exploded through the studio, his royal training completely abandoned. I don't have to sit here and listen to this character assassination from someone who's built her entire career kissing up to the same institution that destroyed my life. The studio audience gasped audibly. This wasn't the polished prince they thought they knew. This was raw, unfiltered anger. And Lorraine Kelly had successfully stripped away every layer of media coaching to expose the bitter, resentful man underneath. Lorraine didn't flinch. If anything, Harry's outburst seemed to energize her further. Character assassination. Harry, I'm using your own words against you. If that feels like assassination, perhaps you should examine what you've actually said about your family. My family? Harry was now shouting, his face contorted with rage. You mean the family that hung me out to dry? The family that refused to protect my wife from racist attacks? The family that chose the institution over their own flesh and blood? The family that gave you everything? Lorraine shot back, matching his energy. The family that funded your lifestyle for 38 years, that gave you purpose, that made you who you are. And you repaid them by selling their secrets to the highest bidder. Harry jumped to his feet, his chair rolling backward from the force. The camera zoomed in as he pointed an accusatory finger at Lorraine, his whole body shaking with fury. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You sit here in your comfortable little studio, judging choices you could never understand. Comfortable little studio? Lorraine's voice reached a crescendo that echoed through the building. Harry, I've worked for everything I have. I didn't inherit titles, wealth, and privilege, only to throw it all away because I didn't get my way. The production team was frantically signaling, but both host and guest were beyond caring about television protocol. This was a full-scale war playing out in front of millions of viewers, and neither party was backing down. You're just like all the rest of them. Harry screamed, his face now purple with rage. Part of the same corrupt system that protects itself at any cost. You're nothing but a mouthpiece for the establishment. Lorraine stood up from her own chair, her small frame somehow commanding the entire studio. And you're nothing but a spoiled brat who couldn't handle being second best. You've destroyed your family's reputation because you were jealous of your brother. That was the final straw. Harry's eyes blazed with a fury that seemed almost unhinged. Don't you dare bring my brother into this. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know he's going to be king while you're relegated to selling tell-all books in America. Lorraine fired back without hesitation. I know he kept his dignity while you sold yours for Netflix money. Harry began ripping off his microphone, his movements erratic and violent. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you. You can take your pathetic little show and your bitter questions and shove them. The wireless microphone clattered to the floor as Harry threw it down with shocking force. The sound reverberated through the stunned studio as he turned toward the exit, his face a mask of pure hatred. Running away again, Harry? Lorraine called after him, her voice carrying across the silent studio. Just like you ran away from your duties, your family, your country? That seems to be your answer to everything. Harry spun around one final time, his finger pointing menacingly at Lorraine. You'll regret this. All of you will regret treating me like this. His voice cracked with emotion, years of resentment and self-pity pouring out in one final, desperate threat. The only thing I regret, Lorraine replied with ice-cold precision, is that it took this long for someone to hold you accountable for your actions. Harry stormed toward the studio exit, pushing past startled crew members and security personnel. His expensive suit was disheveled, his perfectly styled hair mussed from running his hands through it in frustration. The cameras followed his dramatic exit, capturing every moment of his public meltdown. As the studio doors slammed shut behind the departing prince, an eerie silence fell over the set. Lorraine Kelly slowly sat back down in her chair, straightened her blazer, and looked directly into the camera with the composure of a true professional. Well, she said with a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth, I think that tells you everything you need to know about the character of the man we just heard from. The credits began to roll as production assistants scrambled to clean up the chaos Harry had left behind. The microphone still lay broken on the studio floor, a fitting metaphor for the prince's shattered public image. Viewers sat in their homes, absolutely stunned by what they had just witnessed. Social media exploded with reactions as the most explosive interview in television history came to its dramatic conclusion. Lorraine Kelly had accomplished something that years of gentle American interviewers had failed to do. She had shown the world exactly who Prince Harry really was when his carefully constructed facade finally cracked. The morning show that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had instead become a masterclass in how quickly a public figure's reputation could be destroyed when faced with real accountability. And through it all, Lorraine Kelly had remained the consummate professional, proving that sometimes the most devastating interviews come from the most unexpected sources.